The wrestling world has come together this week to collectively mourn the tragic passing of Jamin Pugh, a.k.a. Jay Briscoe. This was a very rough week for everybody in the wrestling community, from obviously the people closest to Jay that are friends with him or close to the family, to people that have worked with him in the ring or maybe just shared a locker room with him in passing, right down to us fans who maybe we've met him at an autograph signing or a convention or after a show out on the curb drinking beer, or maybe we never met him at all and we just admired him from afar as a wrestling fan and respect his body of work that he's gifted us to this world. And the whole wrestling community came out in droves to honor and mourn the loss of Jay Briscoe. You know, everybody from folks in, of course, AEW. A lot of them were wearing armbands on Dynamite. Same with SmackDown over in WWE. And respectively, WWE has even mentioned Jay Briscoe's name on air, both NXT and SmackDown. It's just really sad, but I don't want to spend this segment mourning the loss of Jay Briscoe. I did do a separate clip where I certainly gave my thoughts on his passing and kind of paid my respects and mourned. And I think we've all been through that this week, so I wanted to kind of take it in a different direction and maybe start the process of healing. And what I wanted to do was just collect as many thoughts on Jay Briscoe as I could from the podcast world this week. Now, I'm never going to be able to do this justice, so this is only a sample of what's out there. You know, everybody's talking about it, but I have compiled some of the more prominent tweets that were sent out mourning the loss of Jay Briscoe, as well as a lot of the comments that were made on podcasts this week. Certainly, I'm not going to be able to catch them all, and I would imagine that a lot of other podcasts that were recorded prior to the announcement of Jay's passing will have comments on next week, so obviously they're not going to be able to be included. But I just wanted to kind of pass along as many thoughts on Jay Briscoe as I could. A lot of these are remembering Jay Briscoe. These, obviously, everybody's sad and kind of mourning the loss, but I wanted to kind of pick things where people are remembering certain, memorable moments that they had with Jay, whether it was a match or just meeting the guy or some sort of story, from their time around Jay Briscoe. So I wanted to share as many of those as I could with you here. So that's what I'm going to do. These are from several different podcasts, and so I'm just going to go ahead and let them play. So if you want to sit back and just kind of watch a whole bunch of clips, this one's going to be a longer one, so hang in there. And let's sit and watch the wrestling world mourn and remember the man, more than the wrestler, the man, Jay Briscoe. And I want to start with some of the tweets from the wrestling world. We'll do that with a little bit of music that will honor Jay Briscoe as well. And then we'll move into some of the actual clips from the podcast. But first, let's take a look at some of those tweets.
Reach for the sky, boy. Reach for the sky, boy.
It's hard to talk about Jay without talking about Mark, because they were, yes, they're brothers, but they came together. But my experience with them, and this is, I never ever had any negativity with these guys. During my time as an owner of ROH and beyond that, it was just a pleasure. Always upbeat, no, nothing ever sour. And I think of Jay, and we would laugh. I'd be able to get them to laugh, and they'd make me laugh. And no matter what, there was just never a negative moment with Jay. And what you got with them was, that was them. This was no character. They were the real McCoy.
But as past being wrestlers, we'll get to that shortly. I can't imagine what's going on with the family because of how, if you found anybody in the wrestling business that was more in love with and loved and wrapped up in their family, it would be the Briscoe. There couldn't be anybody more. So, and you've seen, I don't know when, it looked like a head of state would have passed away on Twitter from everybody currently in the wrestling business or that's ever been in a locker room with them or involved with anything to do with Jay's career. You can tell when people are just, oh, we're sorry something happened. No, everybody is torn up. And that's, that's hard to find. And it's more than like some legend from goddamn Attitude Era was gone. It's even though Jay was not on national television, everybody that interacted with the fans that have seen the Briscoes are broken up, and the people who've worked with them, and everybody that's interacted with them.
I don't really like a lot of people in pro wrestling, but I really like Mark and Jay, and I appreciated working with them so much and just having the time to share a locker room with them. I was fortunate enough to be the Ring of Honor 6-man champions with them and just spend some time, working with them. And I'm sure Tommy, I don't know if Tommy told you the story. It tried to lighten the mood just a little bit today of when we worked with the Briscoes at the Hammerstein, and we were having this ultra serious hardcore match, and then me and Tommy wanted to break out lightsabers, and just looking at the looks on Mark and Jay's face when me and Tommy suggested using lightsabers, and they were consummate professionals, and they tried so hard to say no that they didn't want to do it, but it wasn't possible. I'll never forget that story, and seeing the look on Jay's face, who's, to me, who was always the more serious of the two brothers, and he kind of had that bitter beer face, like, Bubba, Tommy, I'm just not sure about that, but he didn't want to be disrespectful to me and Tommy, and I'm gonna miss him. I'm gonna miss him a lot.
ROH, and we were able to get the Briscoes for this Omega show to wrestle myself and Jeff. And Jeff was underneath Impact contract, and typically he didn't do a lot of indies at this time, but they were very willing to let him do the indie, and we were able to put the show together. And I'll never forget these guys. They drove down from Delaware to come to North Carolina for the show, right? And we were able to get them a pretty good payday. I had known them both from Ring of Honor. I'd worked with them for a couple years at that point. And I'll never forget whenever they got there, I took them to Pick and Pig. It's a very famous barbecue place.
Yes.
Which actually burned down about a year ago, and it's actually getting ready to reopen. My wife just told me, and she was actually excited about it. And she doesn't even eat pork. She hates pork. She loves some of the chicken stuff that's there. So they're getting ready to reopen shortly. Like, we went to Pick and Pig that day, and I'll never forget. I said, "Man, you guys are going to love this place, especially if you're barbecue fans." And they both went. They had a great meal, and I almost had to fight Jay because I wanted to pay for their lunch and their dinner, but he wanted to pay for it so badly, And he said, "No, man, I'm down here, and we're working with your guys, and you taking good care of us." I said, "No, man, you drove down. This is a big deal. This is mine and Jeff's high school that we went to, and it's important to us. And we've wanted to have this match with you guys for a long time. No, thank you." But he was he said, "No, let me get it, man. Let me get it." And I had to sneak and pay the bill eventually. But both those guys, sweethearts, and there's so many moments from that conversation where it was myself and Jay and Mark just sitting back eating at Pick and Pig in Carthage, North Carolina, that I really cherished. That was one of the times I really got to spend, 45 minutes or an hour just kind of shooting the shit with them and talking about life, not wrestling, but just talking about life and existence. And
I've seen so many different people post different memories of him. And again, like I said, I hate that so many people are so sad. But he was just real. And I remember after every Impact show, I'd be driving and I'd be seeing him and his brother walking. And I'd be like, "You guys need a ride?" And "Nah, we're good." Or the last time I saw them, we were actually where we're going to be headed this weekend, and they were just hanging out, drinking beers at the 7-Eleven. And I was just like, "You guys want a ride?" And "No, we're just hanging out with the fans." And I was just like, "You guys are awesome. I love me some Briscoes." And that was just them. And
because without Jay Briscoe, without Jay and Mark Briscoe, I wouldn't have had the 2022 that I had, and I wouldn't have been able to give my wife and my daughter the life that they have to the extent that they have for years and years to come, because I'll be able to make a living off of those 3 matches for a really long time. Thank you to everyone who voted, and thank you, Jay, for giving me this life and allowing me to continue to take care of my family. I will do my best to continue to take care of yours.
One of the first Ring of Honor matches I ever saw was El Generico and Kevin Owens taking on the Briscoes. Now, at the moment, I can't remember what year that was, but it was a long time ago, and I'm sure if you'd watch it today, you'd be like, "Oh, they look so young." But it was just one of those things where all of a sudden you watched it and you were like, "This is like nothing else I've ever seen," because it was almost out of control in one sense, but clearly they had planned it to be that way. And I think if you go through all the Briscoes matches, right up to the stuff they were doing with FTR last year, they always had that sense of foreboding, and they always had that sense of danger, but they were so damn intense, and they would just drag you in so effortlessly. And it's one of the reasons they have been going for so long. You cannot survive in any kind of industry for what, 20 plus years, whatever it was, probably a bit less than that, a long ass time, unless you have something about you, have the skill, and you don't sort of adapt and grow as performers. And they both did that. So to think that before you even get to 40, you're not here anymore. I don't even know what you can possibly say.
Because he was a good guy. Both the brothers were. I met him in Puerto Rico, probably 7, 8 years ago. And I love that gimmick. They were two farmers from Delaware. That's a shoot. Two farmers from Delaware. But if you watch them on TV, you think they were straight from the hills of West Virginia. That's what they looked like, and they were great in the ring. I mean, they just had a different look about them. Of course, they were brothers, and I love those guys. It really, my condolences out to the family and the friends of Jay Briscoe.
The very last show, which was in December, and they dropped the tag team titles to Main Event. They put those guys over, homegrown talents in House of Glory in the East Coast independent scene. Two really good guys working with the Briscoes. I'm sure they would be the first to say it, elevated their game. They got to work with the Briscoes multiple times last year. It all built to this moment in December, and the Briscoes did business, and they put them over, and it was a great moment for the local crowd to see Main Event go over and win those titles, and to see them embrace when the match was over. It was a special moment. And it did not hit me until this morning that I got to call the last match that Jay Briscoe will ever have. That match with Main Event was only a week after the match that they had, the dog collar match with FTR. That is the last match of the Briscoes, was on that House of Glory show. And I mean, the fact that that is their last match to me just doesn't compute in my brain. It just doesn't feel real.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. There's nothing I can say that's going to do any of this justice. This one hit me particularly hard, and I'm not sure why. I think it's just the tragedy of it all, because, I've always been aware and respected the Briscoes, and anytime I watched any of their matches that I did see, they were all bangers, you know what I mean? So I've always had a very healthy appreciation for the Briscoes, but was not a regular watcher of Ring of Honor, where they spent the majority of their career. So, I haven't followed their career as closely as a lot of other people have. So I don't have that perspective where he was, one of my favorites that I watched for years and years and years. But I've known him, obviously, for, God, probably close to 20 years, really. You know what I mean? As early as I was aware of what Ring of Honor was, I was aware of who the Briscoes were. And, man, the legacy that they're leaving behind, and I say they because, Mark is so synonymous with Jay. Mark's obviously still with us, but, the body of work belongs to the Briscoes for the most part, even though Jay certainly had his own solo career, a very successful solo career. He did reach the heights of Ring of Honor World's Champion, which not a lot of people can say that they have accomplished. That's still a very high honor to have reached that far. The body of work, the matches that were left behind that we'll go back and we'll watch for 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, I don't remember who said it, but the Briscoes will never be forgotten. They're going to be around long after all of us are gone. You know what I mean? People are going to be talking about the Briscoes historically in their matches and everything. But I think this one was just particularly hard because of the tragedy behind it. We see a lot of death as wrestling fans in the wrestling world, but a lot of it is, quite frankly, due to a lot of the wrestlers' own doing in a lot of these circumstances, or maybe just some old age situation, health issues that you kind of acquire when you get up there. And it's rare that people in their prime, and I would argue, though Jay's been around for 20 years, I don't think the Briscoes have ever been hotter or ever had more awareness on the platform, the mainstream wrestling platform. I think they were really starting to, with the acquisition from AEW and all the cross promotion, that I really think they were starting to reach a bigger audience. And, obviously those FTR matches really put them on the map for a lot of people. So it's just, you don't expect to lose people in their prime. And then, of course, with the kids and everything, the whole thing's just as sad as it gets. But I'm glad that the wrestling community was able to come together and remember Jay Briscoe the way that they did. I've never seen such an outpouring of love, maybe since Brody passed away, I think. Perhaps was, and then maybe not since Owen before that. As the community really come together and mourned the tragic loss of somebody. And it makes me proud to be a member of this wrestling community because, man, there's so much love going around this week, so much positive energy, so much we were all in it together and we all came together. And I've just never been more proud to be a part of even just the smallest part of a wrestling community like that, And a good reflection of that is there was a Give, Send, Go, I believe, set up to aid in some of the medical bills with the family for the two daughters. And, of course, maybe funeral costs for Jay or whatever the family needs to take care of in this time. And I think the goal was 200,000, and it was shattered. The wrestling community came through with fucking 5 stars, 7 stars. A Meltzer 7-star Tokyo Dome Classic with fundraising here in support of the Pugh family. And, we've also gotten some good news on that front. The daughters are doing better. One is stable now and presumably will make a full recovery. The other daughter that was not able to move from the legs, the waist down, had a successful surgery by all accounts and is now having feeling in her thighs and tingling in her toes was the last update that I was able to get. So that's fucking beautiful. And they said it's not going to be immediate. The surgery is not going to, okay, I can walk around now perfectly fine. She's going to have a lot of recovery to do, but it's a good sign that she's able to get the feeling and the tingling. And it should start to come back as the pressure on those vertebrae is taken off over time. So, God, man, starting to get a little emotional again. I told myself I wasn't gonna cry, but it's wow. But I'm glad we could all come together, and I'm glad that the wrestling world was able to remember and reflect, and it was just a thing of beauty in a time of tragedy. And thank you guys for being a part of it.